Good morning. It is Monday, January 13th. Last week I got the date wrong. I kept saying January 7th. So I just want to welcome you to this week's edition. I'm really excited because I have culled a really awesome mantra for you today. Good morning. And that scene with Indra, Maharaja Prthu, and Vishnu is the scenario and the context in which this verse is being spoken today. I am using a text from a book called the Srimad Bhagvatam. This is the volume that I'm taking the mantra from today, and that's a topic for another day. The extent of the Srimad Bhagvatam. So I'm going to put that down and I'm going to refer to my notes now and I'm going to get right into it. So as usual, I'm going to recite the mantra, then I'm going to give the translation, and then I'm going to get into the inner meaning of it. So here we go. Also, I just want to offer my great sympathy to the island of Puerto Rico and what they're going through there. I had many wonderful times there, and I had an uncle from there, and I have many friends there right now. So, prayers and peace. Here we go. Sprishantam parayo premna, vriditam svena karmana, satakratum parisvaja, Vidisham visarjaha. Say it again. Sprishantam parayo premna, vriditam svena karmana, shatakratum parisvaja, vidisham visarjaha. So now I'm going to read the word for word translation. Sprishantam, touching. Padayo, the feet. Premna, in ecstasy. Vriditam, ashamed. Svena, his own. Karmana, by activities. Shatakratum, King Indra. Parisvarja, embracing. Videsham, envy. Vishvasarja, gave up. Ha, of course. Translation. As King Indra was standing by, he became ashamed of his own activities and fell down before King Prthu to touch his lotus feet. But Prthu Maharaj immediately embraced him, and in great ecstasy, and gave up all envy against him for having stolen the horse meant for sacrifice. What does that mean? So I'm going to put this in context for you, the verse. This is a very, very long time ago, and in this age, not now, people were expert at mantra. There was a process in which you could sacrifice an animal and revivify the animal by the power of sound, by mantra. This is called an asvameda sacrifice. So the kings of old, I believe the time that we're talking about here may be Dwarpa Yuga. And this was done, basically, it was a way for the king to establish his preeminence, display his expertise, and also ultimately give in charity to the saintly persons and the Brahmins there. So it's not to be confused with today of sending an animal to the slaughterhouse, not on the same par. It can be a little bit hard for us to understand, but that's the mysticism and the magic of this particular scene. The personalities that are here, and the interaction is taking place between Indra, who is the king of heaven. He is the personality that is in charge of the rain clouds, the weather to a certain degree. And he is an interesting personality. He's very powerful. He lives in great opulence, but he also has a tendency to be envious of others that who he feels is in competition with him. Because Indra, he's very much attached to his title of being the king of heaven. So there are many instances in the Vedas that when he feels like he's being challenged, he tries to start some shit. So this is one of those cases where Maharaja Prthu had everything lined up and he was trying to finish the ceremony and the sacrifice, and every time he had 100 horses lined up, and Indra disguised himself as a saintly person, as a Brahmin, and led this horse away during the sacrifice, right before it was going to finish, just to gum things up. So, however, the other thing about Indra is that he is a Vaishnava. He does have a good heart, but like all of us, his ego gets in the way. Prthu Maharaj is an empowered living entity, and he's called the Shakti Vaishavatar. So the world was in a big state of disarray right before Maharaja Prthu appeared, because the previous ruler was a disaster. He taxed people to death. He didn't care about anything. The state of the economy and the state of the world was a mess. Maharaja Vena. So Prthu now is the antidote to that. So that is the scene. So Maharaja Prthu was a great, great personality. Very kind. But in this instance, he becomes angry. So yes, sometimes spiritual personalities become angry with each other and become envious with each other. It happens. But the point of this verse is to show how these things can be resolved. So let me get into the rest of the purport, or the Siddhanta. Put this over here. Here we go. There are many cases in which a person becomes an offender to the lotus feet of a Vaishnava and later becomes repentant. Here also we find that although the king of heaven, Indra, was so powerful that he accompanied Lord Vishnu, he felt himself a great offender for stealing Prthu Maharaj's horse that was meant for sacrifice. An offender at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava is never excused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many instances illustrating this fact. Ambarish Maharaj was offended by Durvasa Muni, a great sage and mystic yogi, and Durvasa also had to fall down at the lotus feet of Ambarish Maharaj. Indra, the king of heaven, decided to fall down at the lotus feet of King Prthu, but the king was so magnanimous a Vaishnava that he did not want Maharaj Indra to fall down at his feet. Instead, King Prthu immediately picked him up and embraced him, and both of them forgot all the past incidences. Both Indra and Maharaj Prthu were envious and angry with each other, respectively, but since both of them were Vaishnavas, or servants of the Lord Vishnu, it was their duty to adjust the cause of their envy. This is also a first-class example of cooperative behavior between Vaishnavas. In the present day, however, because people are not Vaishnavas, they fight perpetually among one another and are vanquished without finishing the mission of human life. There is a great need to propagate the Krishna consciousness movement in the world, so that even though people sometimes become angry and malicious towards one another because of their being conscious of such rivalry, competition, and envy, it can be adjusted without difficulty. So there is a lot to unpack here. I know that I'm introducing a culture and a mentality and customs that are seeming strange in many ways. But I will say that in the times that we are living in now, in general, people are very much out of touch with their potential. This is an age where we don't live that long, and we have many obstacles in our environment on a day-to-day basis. In other words, our lives are filled with stress. And the state of the planet in general is a diminished one. We could say that we are going through a World War III right now because of the constant attacks on Mother Nature. So that, and just the general state of heart, the sort of the lack of education, all these different things contribute to the factors and the environment in which we are living now. However, the scene in which this is taking place is the polar opposite of that. In fact, it is supremely blessed, because coming into this arena on the back of Garuda, if you're familiar with Indonesia, for example, because Indonesia is a part of old Bharatavarsha, old India, Garuda is the bird carrier, the divine bird carrier of Lord Vishnu. So Indra and Vishnu are arriving in this assembly on the back of Garuda. Just imagine. And when Lord Vishnu arrives, he knows, what's been going on. So he says to Prthu Maharaj, please excuse Indra. So this is direct order from Lord Vishnu himself to King Prthu to please excuse the rascaldom and the mischievous behavior of Indra. So we say that, we should turn the other cheek, right? And that we should treat others as ourselves, and that we should be compassionate. So this is an instance of that. This is an instance of some very, very great personalities. You could say a leader of an entire planet, right? Indra has his own planet, and he's very powerful, and he's controlling the clouds, the rainfall, lightning, thunder, all of those things. And then you have Prthu Maharaj, who is the ruler at this time of the Earth planet. So you've got some big personalities here, and you've got some big egos. But the difference is, of course, is that because they have this underlying understanding of their position ultimately as servants of the cosmos, as servants of the Supreme, of something greater than themselves, and as such, they are bound together. They have an understanding of who their father and mother are. Vishnu and Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the Supreme Mother, and the Supreme Father that are united. These are their parents. These are our parents. And our parents really do not like fighting and arguing and killing and so forth amongst ourselves. The song comes to mind of by Marvin Gaye, right? Mercy, mercy me. All he asks of us is to give each other love. So this is a great first-class example of that. So one of the things I like about this verse is here in the explanation it says, both King Indra and Maharaja Prthu were envious and angry with each other, but since both of them were Vaishnavas or servants of Vishnu, it was their duty to adjust the cause of their envy. It was their duty to adjust the cause of their envy. So it's not an arbitrary thing. Like, well, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like making up with him. I don't want to. He did something against me. I'm deeply offended. and I'm turning my back on him. He is cut off. As a matter of fact, I think I'll escalate things and do something back. And then back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth, and we have a war going on. So as this pastime goes on, you discover that because of his compassionate nature, and because he was able to surrender to this instruction to forgive or to excuse Indra in this instance, there was an insight that was given to him about the personality, about the character, about the vulnerabilities, if you like, of Indra. You know, he could understand that all this pomp and circumstance was something very hard for Indra to take. And Prthu Maharaj, although of course this was also his duty, you know, he had his worldly duties and he had his spiritual duties. And so the whole art of living is to how to mingle or merge, how to combine these things together in an artful way to live peacefully and to not agitate other people. So he actually felt bad. He felt bad that he had to display, you know, all this kind of pomp and circumstance and this different opulence. So that's very telling on the state of the heart of Maharaja Prthu. Also, in this verse, it's mentioned about another incident happening between a great mystic yogi whose name was Durvasa Muni. He was actually, interestingly enough, an advisor to Lord Indra. And he was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, actually. And because of that, he had a lot of mystic powers. He was very, very powerful. And Ambarish Maharaj was also a saintly king. So the rulers of the people that I'm talking about here, they are known as Rajarsis, or saintly kings. So they actually listen to the advice of the people in the kingdom that are wiser than they are. In other words, that are more renounced. So when you're a king, you're dealing with great sums of money. You're living in a very opulent place. You have a lot of servants. You have a lot of facility at your command. Probably have a fabulous wardrobe. You may have a wife. You may have two wives or so if you are in this position in ancient India and you are actually able to support that many people. You have a lot of children. You have ministers. You have a lot going on. And because of all of that, you have a tendency to become materially contaminated. You have a tendency to become attached, overly attached to the material opulence around you. So therefore, the structure at this time was that the Brahmins were or are the head of society because they are the head of the social body. They love reading. They're not really interested in owning a lot of possessions. As a matter of fact, they own very little and they live very simply. They are the mouth of Lord Vishnu. The offerings that are given in the sacrificial fire is considered to be the mouth of Lord Vishnu, and the Brahmins eat in this way. So at the end of any kind of ceremony like this, the Brahmins would be given to in charity because they didn't, quote, go out and make a living. Their function and their interest and their passion, if you were, even though they're situated in the mode of goodness, was to guide society and direct society. So Durvasa Muni one day shows up just at the end of Ambarish Maharaj completing a fast. He was performing an austerity as advised to him by the family guru, by the family priest, the family Brahmin. And because there is timing involved with this, he had to finish it at a certain time. He was sitting on the banks of the river and he had to break his fast at a certain time. Otherwise, the whole reason for performing this austerity would have been nullified. Durvasa Muni arrives exactly at this time, and, as is the custom, is expecting to be received sumptuously by the king himself, to be seated, to be offered nice foodstuffs, along with his 10,000 disciples. So he didn't show up alone. He showed up with an entire posse, an entire entourage. And it's to be understood that they were probably hungry and had probably walked or come from a great distance. Unfortunately, he lost his temper. He became angry when he was not received properly. And because of that, he committed an offense to Maharaj Ambarish. I believe that he actually cursed Maharaj Ambarish. And so because of that, again, Lord Vishnu became very angry about that. Of course, the anger was transcendental. All these things are instructive and to teach a lesson, because these people are not average anyway. These are great personalities, but these things are played out to demonstrate something to us. Vishnu released his Sudarshan chakra. The Sudarshan chakra actually is a weapon. There are 4 things that Lord Vishnu carries with him in his 4 arms. Each arm has a different paraphernalia. So there is the club, and there is conch shell, there is the lotus flower, and then there is a Sudarshan chakra. So the lotus flower and the conch shell is there for benediction, and as you can imagine, the club and the Sudarshan chakra is there to chastise the asuras, to chastise those who hassle, who commit violence, who disturb saintly people, people that are on the path of yoga, right? Of course, that could be, in another cultural context as well. Doesn't appreciate that. So he releases Sudarshan chakra, which is like a fiery disc, and it followed Ambarish Maharaj all over the universe, the lower planetary systems, the middle planetary systems where we reside, and the upper planetary systems. He was trying to get away from it. And no matter how skilled he was and no matter how fast he was running, of course, he couldn't. It was right on his heels. He was in a great deal of anxiety, to say the least. And so he went to Lord Shiva and he said, help, help. Could you please, save me and protect me from the Sudarshan chakra? Lord Shiva said, I'm sorry. I can't, I can't do anything to help you out, man. So then he went to Lord Vishnu and said, please help me. I'm sorry I did this. Please stop. I bowed down. And Lord Vishnu said, I'm sorry, I'm actually powerless. Even though that I'm the Supreme Personality, there's nothing I can do to help you. I cannot do anything to someone who has offended my devotee. So, if you want to be pardoned, you're going to have to go to Maharaj Ambarish yourself and ask for forgiveness. You're going to have to beg for forgiveness yourself. So this is instructive because even though the Lord is impartial to everyone, for those who are sincere, and that are faithful and following, right? Not just saying things, but actually doing things, he offers protection. And everyone is available for that. But does everyone take it? No. Because to take it requires faith. And faith is something that needs to be developed, right? And you have to be willing to follow something higher than yourself. You have to be willing to be a little humble and to change your habits. We're not always willing to do that. So at any rate, Durvasa Muni, then he went to Ambarish Maharaj, and with this disc behind him, and begged his forgiveness and please forgive me. I'm so sorry, for having offended you. I was puffed up with my own position. I thought I was all that. I showed up here right when you were at the end of your fast. I should know better after all. I'm a mystic yogi and I understand these different things. But because I felt that I wasn't being treated the way I should be treated, I committed an offense to you instead of waiting patiently and humbly when you were done to be received. So that is another example of that. I think that we understand the meaning of this. We wish that our world leaders today could take a cue from this and let bygones be bygones and not escalate things and get into international conflicts and put innocent people at risk. So my hope is that by starting our own grassroots movement here and by implementing these things, imbibing these things, cleansing our own hearts and advancing together, and also chanting together very loudly to change the atmosphere on this planet, to actually create a transcendental atmosphere of goodness, a pious atmosphere of goodness, that we can mitigate these things, because it's totally possible to do this. So that's my purpose in sharing this verse with you today. So I'm going to close out by repeating the mantra and repeating the translation. Again, this was from Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, Text 18. Sprishantam parayo premna, vriditam svena karmana, shata kratum parisvadja, videsham vishasarjaha. As King Indra was standing by, he became ashamed of his own activities and fell down before King Prthu to touch his lotus feet. But Prthu Maharaj immediately embraced him in great ecstasy and gave up all envy against him for having stolen the horse meant for the sacrifice. Thank you very much. I will post and I wish you a wonderful week. Thank you so much for being here with me. I really appreciate you. Namaste. Have a great week. Until we see you next week, bye-bye.